What about me? I wanted to read the entirety of this story so that you can get the full context of it. But instead of talking it from the Bible, I wanted to bring it into everyday terms so you could really follow and understand what it is I'm trying to say. Last week we started what I now know to be a series. At the time I thought I was just preaching something last week, but the Lord said that we need to add to it so that we can grow from it. We preached the message last Sunday that said, Lord, help me with my unbelief. And we talked about having that lack of faith and that lack of belief to be able to be what God has called you to be and to be able to do what God has called you to do. And in that message on last week, I told you there were 3 things that we needed to address if we were ever going to get to the place where we can be helped with our unbelief, where our unbelief can be transitioned into belief. And I told you those very 3 things, if you would put those up on the board for me, those very 3 things that I think that either hindered us or needed to be addressed in order for us to have our belief addressed were these 3 things right here. The very first one, it should be at the top. It should list 3 things. The very first one, I'll go without it there. The very first one we talked about last week was fear. And I told you that fear is a critical killer of your belief system. Because you fear, you have the hard time in believing in God. Because what fear says is I'm going to believe what I see rather than believe what I know to be true. Fear says that when I have the opportunity to go the way that I know is right, or I have the opportunity to go the way I think is right, fear will tell me to go the way that I think is right because I fear that I will fail if I try to follow God. So we must work on the fear in our lives. We have to get to the place where fear does not rule us or reign supreme in our lives, but we take control of the fear. I went on to tell you last week that part of the thing that causes fear to come up in your life is the experience you faced in your life. Because I've experienced certain things and I've failed at certain things because I've been in situations where certain things have caused me to feel uncomfortable or caused me to feel in a way that wasn't pleasant. Fear now steps in and reminds me of what I've been through, and fear now holds me captive and won't allow me to go any further. Does that make sense? The second thing that we talked about last week, I told you the other thing that hinders us from believing and establishing our faith in God, the second thing is disobedience. And I said disobedience comes from the fact, because I fear God, because I fear what I see, because of what I see seems to be overwhelming, then I'm going to do it the way that I think is best rather than do it the way God thinks is best. The Bible is clear and it is precise on every area of your life on how you ought to carry yourself, how you ought to maintain a standard of living, how you ought to always reverence God. But what disobedience says is I'm not going to do it the way that the Bible declares. I'm going to do it the way that I think is best. Disobedience says when God sends a tailor-made word, like he does every Sunday morning across the pulpit, even though the word tells me I need to do this, disobedience says I think it's best that I go and do that.
All right.
Hallelujah.
Yes.
Last but not least, the third thing that we talked about last week when we said that we're trying to build our unbelief is we said that we have to grab a hold of patience. And what patience says, we talked about us living today in a microwave society and how we talked about everything in this society today is based on instant gratification. If I got something I want to say to you and I don't have time to pick up the phone and dial your number, I don't have time to wait on the signal for the call to go through, I don't have time for the phone to ring 4 or 5 times. I don't have time for you to answer the phone for me to begin to share what I'm thinking. Because I'm impatient, I can simply send a text message. Society have created so many ways for us to be able to get what we want at the minute we desire it and continue to move on with life. But God says if you're ever going to serve me, you're going to have to learn to be patient. God says because everything that I do, I don't just do it in time, but I do it in the right time. I make sure when I give you something or when I prepare something and present it to you. I'm giving it to you at the proper time that you'll get the most benefit out of. It doesn't do us any good for me to go out here right now and take my hard-earned money and buy a nice vehicle and hand the keys to Savannah. There's absolutely nothing she can do with it right now but take the keys, put it in her mouth, and drool all over it. And the car that I'm giving her, that's not the intention that I had for that car. So now I've created something special and wonderful to present to her, but she's not ready. Somebody say, have patience. So I've got to learn to have patience, and I've got to understand that at the moment it shall come to me is the exact time that God wanted me to have. So today I want to add one more thing to that list, and we'll probably go another week or two with this series, Lord Help My Unbelief. There's another thing that the Lord showed me that we struggle with that causes us to lack in our faith. And God said that thing is to be overlooked. God says that constantly we're overlooked in life. We're overlooked by people. We're overlooked by our peers. We're overlooked by folks that are all around us. And he says, and it's gotten you to the place where your attitude is, they do not recognize me. They do not honor me. They do not celebrate me. In some cases, they don't even acknowledge me. So what's the point? And God says, because I created you, and when I created you, you became the apple of my eye. And regardless of whoever cries your name out, you're still important to me. Long as you and I got a relationship, it doesn't matter who your crowd is behind you. It doesn't matter who the hype man is walking with you. I ordained you to be blessed, and you're going to be blessed whether 10 people see it or you're blessed whether 10,000 people see it. So I want to dig into this story and just I want to deal with this story from the sense of the brother, because oftentimes when we preach the story of the lost son, we often talk about the lost son, and we talk about how it is that you can be connected to your father, and your father have everything, and your father is able to supply every one of your needs, and your father is able to give you anything by just saying a word. How is it you could find yourself in that state, and that state still not be good enough for you? And we often criticize the son because we say, here it is, you were living in a life of luxury. All you didn't even have to lift a finger. All you had to do was say the word and things came to you. But he found himself in a moment where that wasn't good enough. I wanted to sow my wild oats. I want to go out there and find life for myself. I know how I've been raised. I know how I've been provided for. But I imagine certainly he felt like there has to be more out there for me. So we often talk about that, and we talk about how he got out there and he got lost in the world, and he began to squander away all that was given to him. Here it is, he didn't work up for anything, he didn't earn anything, but simply because of who his daddy was. And I found it amazing that you could go to your father and ask him for your inheritance when you did not do anything to earn it. Oh, ain't that like the God we serve? I ask God for all kinds of things that I don't even deserve. I ask God for all kinds of things that I have not even earned, and he still gives it to me because he loves me. So the Bible goes on to tell the story about the son after he wilds out and he finds himself wasting all his money away. The Bible says he comes to his senses. And once he comes to his senses, he decides, I had it so much better when I was at home. I should have stayed at home. Now, for a moment there, he disqualifies himself. And we do this often. Oftentimes, we make mistakes in life, and we immediately start disqualifying ourselves, saying, well, God won't do this because I did this. But maybe because he's God, and maybe because he doesn't see me the way man sees me, and maybe because the way he doesn't love me the way man loves me, maybe he'll take me back. But because I messed up, he'll most likely take me back at a reduced rate. And God says, I don't operate like that. If I'm going to take you back, I'm taking you back all the way. If I'm going to take you back, I'm going to forget all about your sins. And I'm going to love you as if you've never done anything wrong. If I'm going to take you back, I'm going to roll out the red carpet and let you know I missed you. So that's exactly what the father did for the son. He welcomed him back with open arms. But then when we start at verse 25, go to verse 25 for me. The Bible then talks about the other son. And I said, I want to deal with that for a few moments, because a lot of us sometimes, we find ourselves in either side. I can't even say I'm the other son. I'm the son that went out and messed up. But for those of you who have been like the other son, who have always tried to do everything right, who have always tried to be consistent in your life, who have always tried to dot every I and cross every T, I imagine if you were that son, you would be angry. Yeah. Here it is, I've been hanging in there. Here it is, I show up every Sunday when don't nobody else come. Here it is, I'm there on Thursdays when only 2 other people show up. Here it is, every time somebody gets sick, I'm going to visit them in the hospital. Here it is, every time somebody has death in the family, I'm right there to support them. Here it is, every time somebody falls on hard times and they just got out the hospital, I'm fixing them a plate to take to them. I'm always trying to do everything right, but you're celebrating the other son. And I started thinking, imagine how that must made him feel. Imagine, to me, he probably got to the place where he said, you know what, he's gone out there and he's going to wild out and do his thing, and I'm still here, and I know Dad is probably disappointed and hurt by the fact that he left, so I don't want to bring extra burden to him, so let me make sure I do everything I'm supposed to do. And we often strive, let me be in the place where I'm supposed to be. If God's got to do some discipline, let it be over there. When he comes to me, let him just be pleased with what he sees. Hallelujah. And then all of a sudden, why does it seem like every time it's time to honor somebody, we're honoring everybody else? Why is it that when it's time to promote somebody, we're promoting somebody else? Why is it every time somebody makes a name for themselves, it's always somebody else? Here it is, I'm pushing to do the best that I can. Here it is, I'm striving to hold on to my faith. Here it is, I'm not giving up when the devil tries to push me to give up. Why is it that I'm constantly overlooked? So God says this to me. He says, you know what? Being overlooked is actually a good thing. Wow. And I said, okay, you're going to have to teach me that, because that doesn't make sense to me. He said, here's what being overlooked is like. And he showed me something. He says, when you're overlooked, he said, what that saying is this. Listen to this. When you're overlooked, it means you are reliable, you are consistent, and you are proficient at what you do. I said, how is that possible? That doesn't make sense. Because if I'm reliable, you would think that people would notice that. If I'm proficient, you would think somebody would appreciate that. If I was good at what I do, you would think somebody would come along and advertise that. Yeah. And then I woke up this morning and I got up to prepare the message, and the Lord started dealing with me just concerning Lady J. And it's amazing what she was talking about this morning. He started really showing me everything that's on her plate. And he said, you don't know what it takes to be the mother of a son that's challenged. You don't know what it takes to be the wife of a husband who has to pastor and deals with mood swings. You don't know what it takes to be a daughter and a sister and all of these other positions where she faces. I said, okay, Lord. I said, so let me do my part. So I got up this morning and I decided that I wanted to be a good husband. So I went and got some rubbing oil. And I went over to Lady J and I pulled the covers back and I began to give her a massage. And I'm going somewhere, y'all follow me. I began to give her a massage. I said I'm going to give her a full body massage. We're going to start this Sunday morning off right. Yeah. So I got the oil and I think I started down at her feet. And I got the oil and I started rubbing the oil on her feet. And at first she was just laying there. And after about 10 minutes into it, I noticed she started snoring. And I said, okay, this is what I'm talking about. I said, here it is. I'm trying to please my wife. Here it is. I'm trying to do something nice for her. And she's sitting there sleeping. I said, that's almost like being overlooked. God said, but you're missing the point. He said, the point is, you're doing it so good that she trusts you. You're doing it so good that she can go focus on something else. You're doing so good that you haven't rocked the boat, that she's able to go back to sleep. He said, you thinking this, she don't appreciate what you're doing. She's saying, I can count on you to do that part so I can go focus on something else. The Lord says, imagine you being a doorman, and every morning as people came in the door, it was your job to hand them the newspaper. As long as I walked through the door on Monday, you hand me my paper, I'm fine. As long as I walk through the door Tuesday, you hand me my paper, I'm fine. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I'm fine. But if I ever come through one day and you don't have it, now we have a problem. And God says the reason that you're being overlooked because